Hey, it's Anthony with Land Title. I came to bring you your year-end wrap-up for luxury in Boulder County. So let's kind of look back at everything that's happened throughout 2025 and specifically in December as well. We'll kind of walk through a bunch of this. If you need the presentation, please reach out to me. I'm happy to provide it. You guys can use it however you need it. The one thing I wanted to remind you as we've kind of seen this take place is, over the course of basically since the pandemic, right? You've seen this consistent increase in inventory building up in the marketplace, and that trend line, that lighter blue line that kind of runs through it all, it just shows you the trend of where things have been heading. And so this is average sold price versus original list price, right? It doesn't include concessions, but it does include price drops and all of that. The one thing that's tough to tell here is if a property's been listed 3 times over this course of time, that doesn't play in, but it really does give you a good idea of where, luxury kind of has been headed. And clearly luxury has been slowly declining in value over the last 3 years. And I think this plays to that. And it also might help set some expectations as far as when you list a home, what should we expect? Now, there's a lot of ways to do this, right? You can see the trend line for the average price drops that have taken place in that time as well. And it really hasn't been dramatically different, right? Most of the year in 2025 was actually better than where that trend line has been. So that's a good sign that we have less price drops, but it also might mean that people are getting a little more realistic when they're listing a home to what that price looks like. Okay, so let's talk about sales, right? I think the big question has been like, how has luxury been doing? And if you look at the green, these are closing months. So 12 being December, 1 being January, right? How many closings, since we've been tracking this in 22, are really taking place? And I think what you can tell slowly over time is that the luxury market is starting to increase in volume again. People are coming back into this market. They're buying more property in Boulder a little bit each year, right? So 2025 did a little bit better than 2024. The other real question is like, where is it taking place in luxury, right? And it's very clear that the lower end has been doing significantly better than it had in years past. And the higher end luxury stuff is very similar to before. So what really I think took place a lot here, because you can see the 3 to 3.5 million mark were actually way less in solds than there was a year ago. But the big difference is people got real on their price, and we sold almost double as many homes from 2.5 to 3 million. So those people that were on the cusp that really, maybe didn't price their home correctly out of the get-go, we're starting to really see prices get a little bit less. But in doing so, we've also built some really incredible luxury and ultra luxury properties out there. And you can see they're still selling, no concern there, right? 4 to 4.5 million. We sold 16 units instead of 11. So we're still seeing a lot of volume. And if we get up to ultra luxury, that 6+ million market in Boulder, you can really see, just because 6 to 6.5 million had 3 sales instead of 5, we did have a sale at 14.5 million this year, right? So we've seen more sales take place. There was a huge gap though between the one that sold at 8 million and the one that sold at 14.5 million. And I mean, it's hard to say why or how, but very cool that we set another MLS record here with that sale this year. It's not something that's shown up in our data before. Have there been off-market sales higher than that? Yes, there absolutely have been, but it's not something we can track very easily. The other thing to look at is these tell you the volume of sales taking place, right? So you can really see the difference through the years. And this is 22, right? Part of the pandemic year. And then you can see even into 23, we did have a large amount of sales at 2+ million and maybe a few less at some of the other marks. But as we've slowly changed our, composition of sales, I think you can tell that more stuff out in the county is selling at a higher price and fetching higher prices compared to Boulder as a percentage sale, right? So look at this $2 million one in 2025. Did we have a lot of sales at 2 million? Yes, absolutely. We had about 75, 80 sales, something like that in the city of Boulder. But look how many sales took place at over 2 million out in Longmont or in Louisville or in Niwot, right? So a large percentage or a larger percentage of the luxury volume is taking place out in the county right now, which is very cool to see. You can see that definitely less likely as you kind of get up into the higher price ranges, but always useful to use if you need it. Okay, so this one is closings by month. And I think the reason I put this slide together is we wanted to talk a little bit about seasonality and how that affected things, because it's so different in luxury than it is in the rest of the market. And here you can see in the green lines that houses clearly sold faster in the middle of the year, right? May, June, July, and August had the lowest days in MLS for the stuff that actually went under contract. But if you look at the year as a whole, it's very similar for the rest of the year, right? February had super low days in MLS. October had low days in MLS, but like basically under 100 days across the board all the time, right? There's way less seasonality taking place. And if you look back at history, look at 23 or 24, those middle of the year numbers were also very similar to the rest of the year. So we've had a little more seasonality in 2025, but honestly, it just looks like it doesn't matter too much when you list. It matters, do you have a good product and is it priced correctly on the marketplace? You can see here by price point. So if it's really important to you to compare, what's happening with your client's house to that price, of course, I put them in here for you. They should be selling relatively quickly if they're, in the kind of 2 to 5 million mark. Once we get above that, definitely set some expectations about how long it takes to sell some of these homes. Sorry about that. And if you look at the 6 to 15 million mark, you can really see definitely can take 100, 150 days to get some of those homes sold, because you really are just looking for the right buyer to come through. That one that sold at 14.5 million almost spent 200 days on market, right? And it's not a stigmatized property. It's just good luck finding, a buyer to come to town that, number one, has the cash, but number two, wants that specific product. And we saw with that $9 million sale that took place in 24 as well. Okay, so this is data directly out of InfoSparks, and we put this together because a lot of people were asking questions about what's happening on a month-to-month basis. So use this as you kind of go through that. It's broken down by price range for you. You can really see new units coming to market in December, right? Less units have definitely come to market through a lot of these price points in 25, right? In 2 to 2.5 million, we were down 20% in active units, which when you're doing this view is only one unit. So take that with a grain of salt. So you can really see here how many homes are coming to market and really what you're competing with if you're listing homes there. Active units of inventory tells the story though, because just because you had 4 new units come to market, there's still 39 units on the market, which is actually 11% more than we had a year ago. So you can really see this through all the price bands, what you're expecting. Look at 3 to 3.5 million. We're up basically over double of what we had to the prior year. And we had 21 units on the market in that range, and there's not that many that go under contract every month. So setting proper expectations around that really can help. Pending sales, you can see the under contract numbers, right, to compare to the previous slide. So 7 out of the 39 went under contract in the 2 to $2.5 million market, right? It's kind of how you would use that. You can definitely see that we had 3 go under contract from 3.5 to 4 million. So definitely stuff can go under contract over the holidays, right? A December month is never a bad month in the luxury space, even though it can be a little more challenging in the median home buyer space because, different types of people that are traveling and everything else into Boulder definitely will look at some of these homes. The closings, obviously they lag a little bit. So this was a slower closing month in some ways, but you can definitely see what happened there. Month supply of homes for sale. This is a good one because it tells you how much competition you have on the market there, right? Even in that 2 to 2.5 million market, it really hasn't changed much over the last few years. I think that's kind of the anomaly of there's just so much luxury inventory. But when you're looking at something like that, 2.5 million area, we still only have 3.5, 4 months of inventory right now. It's very similar to before. Now, will it rise? Of course, it will rise going into the next year. This is the lowest month supply of inventory month of the year, almost every single year, sometimes January, but most of the time it's December because that's when people have pulled so much off the market. Now, when you see stuff like 3.5 to 4 million get listed, tons more properties, pushes those numbers way up to 11 months. That's what we should be expecting in some of those higher price points pretty much throughout the year anyway. So these numbers might be slightly misleading because it's so low for the time of year. But when they get up to, 10 to 20 months of inventory at some of the higher price ranges, don't be surprised through the rest of the year when you have more competition, which I think is why you want to really get these on the market and list them earlier in the year. This is showings. So when you're trying to see what's actually out there, who are really looking at product. I think the one thing you got to remember is the lower the price range, the more likely you are to have more showings. So if you're really strapped for showing traffic, it's not always because, we did something wrong, right? I mean, you can see 1 to 1.3 showings per listing at 3.5 to 4 million. Or 4.5 to 5 million, there was no showings because there just wasn't anyone looking in that price range during December. So this captures some interesting stuff, but you can definitely tell if you need more showing traffic, lowering the price absolutely will bring you more buyers that could potentially purchase a property. All right, so this is sales price to original list price versus the days in MLS. So really just like how long it sits on the market, are you more likely to get a decreased sales price? And it really does appear that way, right? That trend line suggests that the longer it's on the market, the more likely you are to get a lower price. Now, some of this could be because you have to drop price in order to get it under contract. But if you set price properly up front, you can really see in this graph within the first 3-4 weeks, you're really likely to get a pretty decent offer. If you wait a longer period of time, which, depending on the time of year or the product or whatever, maybe you're waiting for a specific buyer, that could work. But it does indicate that it might take a while to go under contract, and you will get a lower offer because the buyer has more negotiating power at that time. You can see these throughout all the price brackets. I won't break into them too much, but they all kind of tell the same story in many ways. So this is 2.5 to 3 million, 3 to 3.5 million. Similar situations, right? And I've got them for all the price ranges for you: 3.5 to 4 million, 4 to 5 million. Similar trend, right? And here we go, 5 to 6. And that's it. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully this is usable data. If you need just the City of Boulder, please reach out to me. I do have that as well. Probably won't be shooting a video on it this month because I wanted to give you kind of the big picture wrap up for the year. But feel free to reach out to me for any other data needs or anything like that. I'm Anthony at Land Title, and I hope to catch you soon. Have a great day.